Hello friends, welcome back to the It's a Guitar YouTube channel. This video, we're gonna be looking at my workbench, the whole setup, what it looks like currently, as well as my favorite tools, the ones I recommend and use all the time. So without further ado, let's jump to it. So the workbench is not very large, as you guys can see, but we make maximum use of it without doing too much modification. So just kind of hand reference here, you guys can see it's not very deep, but it is filled to the brim with stuff. So let's run through it really quickly. Use the timestamps if you guys want to jump around, but we'll go through kind of a brief overview, and then I want to jump into kind of my favorite tools, the things I recommend. So let's get to it. We'll start over in this corner here. Got this awesome organizer, and I've got every single resistor value basically you see in a tube amplifier. And I've got all sorts of types, right? So carbon comp, metal oxide, carbon film, power metal film, etc. for every value you pretty much ever see in 90% of amplifiers. So this covers most of my bases all the way from 47 ohm down to 10 meg. Diodes, Roach, things of that nature here. Potentiometers, Fender hardware, tubes, my caps. So I keep a decent amount of caps on hand, not a ton, but cathode bypass caps, 25 microfarad caps, 8 microfarad caps, 10 microfarad caps, those are all here. 20 microfarad, the larger 500 volt caps, those all go in there. 70 microfarad plus in here, and then these are kind of the oddballs, 100 microfarad, 250 microfarad, etc. And then beyond that, we got just some poles, and then just some tube stuff here. Moving on over here to this other, we got more tubes, so these are vintage tubes, new tubes, various ones, different fuses, terminal strips, bias resistors, etc. We'll jump over here, hardware. We'll get into specific stuff more in a second. Wiring, and then this is more for guitar setup things. This is the I need to grab it often, so I'm just going to leave it out drawer here. So we got socket sets, we got jacks, we've got strain reliefs, we got bus wire, hardware stuff, silicone, super glue, stuff of that nature. And then this is the I need to grab it constantly as well, little hanger. We'll get into all of those more in a bit. Solder setup, solder station over there. I'll show more detail on that. The camera rig, you guys can see it really quickly. So I've got a light here that just kind of backfills this area. I've got a tripod so that the camera can sit up like this. That should look fairly familiar to you guys. And then I've got a Rode video mic NTG as my main vocal mic. I don't love it, but it works and I've had it for years. So, and then real quick, we'll move over and show you the light. It is an Amaran 200D. Hopefully you guys can see that with a large softbox here, whatever you call these, I can't remember. And I also like to use this guy, but I've been liking this one more. So I believe it's called a lantern style. So moving on from there, I've got pinouts for all the common tube types I run into, just so I can quickly glance at that and see resistor color codes here if I'm forgetting or just need a reassurance. That's micromesh grit chart there. Nice little reminder for myself not to get hurt. More common tools, and you grab isopropyl. We'll get to that more in a second. More tools here. Variac, current limiter, little fan to blow the solder fumes away. And then we've got the signal generator, the aux box, the oscilloscope, and the isolation transformer there. Down below, we've got some other stuff I'll get to in a second. And then I want to show you this. So this is more just, miscellaneous parts. I actually got this from a guy, and I haven't touched any of this section here. He was more of a pedal builder, so it's a bunch of mismatch of things. But we've got 100 picofarad all the way to 0.47 microfarad in little caps here that I can just grab, and these are common values you find in a lot of amps. Some new old stock stuff, sockets, trim pots, things like that. The little lamp bulbs. And then I've also got a stash of more resistors. These are all carbon comp resistors. So moving back over here, let's dive into my favorite items, my most recommended tools that I use, as well as just some of the bespoke things I've made which have been very helpful. So let's set up for that. So here's the first wave of stuff I want to show you guys. We'll briefly run through it. Having one of these magnetic little parts trays is so helpful. I have two, in fact. I use them constantly. Highly recommend. Those are from Harbor Freight for like $1. So I use those all the time. Just good to throw screws and stuff in there and not worry about them falling out and losing them. Solder wise, I get asked about this every once in a while. So the wick I use is this right here, Chemtronics. And the size there is number 4. You can see the thickness next to my finger. I find this to be a good happy medium. I don't like the real thin stuff. I see a lot of people use the real thin stuff. But one size up from this I also really like, but it's harder to find and expensive. This is kind of my favorite compromise so far. It works really well. Solder, I use 2 different sizes. You can see the thickness differences, quite thin or quite thick. And then the actual specs on them, they are Kester solder, and I'll let you guys look at that. You can see 1.5 mil for the thicker one and 0.8 mil for the thinner one. And then solder sucker, man, this is about the only decent one I've ever found. I really don't like the size of it. It needs to be larger. It's kind of hard to hold, so I wish they'd make it slightly larger, but this is the only one that works and doesn't get completely clogged in 2 seconds. The tip on it doesn't melt, so that's good enough for me for now, but I am open to recommendations on that. I've tried the larger ones. They just don't work very well. Moving on up here, silicone. Use this constantly for holding down caps and whatnot. This is what I recommend. Silicone RTV. You can get this at, again, Harbor Freight, Auto Parts Store, probably Home Depot and the like. Let's go through kind of my favorite tools, hand tools here. I've tried a bunch of different stuff from Nipex, from various makers that you guys typically see, Harbor Freight stuff, all the way up to fairly nice stuff. This is my favorite by far that I've run into. So this is a brand called Engineer. They're out of Japan, actually. And the quality is just really nice. They feel really good in the hand. The grips are nice. And the tools are excellent. They work really well. I've not had any problems. This has been the best cutter I've owned by far. It's called the NS04, looks like. Just super solid. Really, really good in the hands. Very sharp. And then finding needle nose that are decent has been really tough. And again, this is my favorite one. Looks like it's PS03. This looks like what the size is. So it's got a fairly nice point to it. And then for something a bit more traditional on it with teeth, if I need to have some grip to it, or like little cutters, these work great. So highly recommend these. These are my favorite, again, by a country mile of everything I've tried so far. And then moving over to a couple of gifts I was actually given by a friend of the channel, Matt. So he made this. This is a really handy tool that basically allows me to do a number of things, spreading or tightening tube socket pins, or just kind of fitting leads into eyelets. So if you've got multiple leads that have to fit into a single fender eyelet, this is really helpful with that sharp tip. And then this really nice kind of ratcheting screwdriver. This is the best one I've ever had as well. And he gifted me this. Thanks again, Matt. And it just works great. I don't know the model of it or anything. Williams, I guess. Yeah, feels great. Works great. Moving on down the line here. Now, these are for the strain relief. And I was, kind of like, I don't really need something like that for a long time. And I decided to buy a pair of cheap ones. I think I got them off of, gosh, I don't remember, maybe Amazon. And I don't even think they're branded. Yeah, I see no brand on them. And they work great. Just perfect for just getting the strain relief on. This definitely is a helpful tool, and I recommend getting one of these. It was like $5 or something. Zippo lighter fluid, perfect for cleaning things. Isopropyl, spilled some in the background, but this off Amazon you can get 99%. None of my local drugstores or anything carry 99%, so I get that off Amazon. Little bristle brushes here. These are awesome. I also think I got these from Harbor Freight. So you got brass style, nylon style, and I think this is like steel. And so those are great for cleaning, tube pins, or just all sorts of things. Obviously using the right one for the job. That's all fantastic. Now, multimeters. I've had a few. I've got another one over here. And I don't have, I haven't balled out and got a really nice, expensive one like a Fluke or something. Just never really felt the need, to be honest. I don't really see the advantage they have over something like this. This is pretty cheap. I think I got this off Amazon. the Synday 18B Plus. It works excellent. The only annoying thing is it'll beep when it's been on for too long, and that drives me crazy. So I wish I could turn the beep off. Maybe there's a way, but otherwise it works great and is much faster on the auto ranging than all of my other multimeters, including this nicer one over here. And then as far as the actual ends are concerned, I love these little attachments that you can slide on and off. So you get the traditional, prodder there, and then this you just stick on. I do it one-handed. And then you've got the little hook on the end. So you can hook onto things, and it's a bit safer than using, a really small little guy like this. So yeah, those work pretty well in general. Moving on to the soldering station, I highly recommend this. This is one of my best purchases, I think. This is the Heiko FX600. You guys can see that. And it's a little handheld guy, and it doesn't have a base or anything. It plugs directly into the outlet. And if I remember correctly, this was a Japanese model. Yeah, you can see on the back, the Japanese model. And so it's actually expecting lower voltage. So when you run it at 120 from the wall, it performs really well. It heats up instantly, crazy fast, faster than any other soldering iron I've had. It stays at the temperature much better than any other iron I've had. And it's just really stable. I'm a huge fan of this. Highly recommend. I think you get this off Amazon as well. And then the base is great as well. And you can see the Heiko numbers there. So that's that. Variac. I use this constantly. This is a must tool, I think, if you do any Amp Tech stuff. Especially if you work on old fenders, like Tweeds or whatever, that might be expecting 110 volts or something. This just really gives you a lot of options and range, and I just love being able to set every amp when I'm biasing it to a specific voltage, so that the bias I know is going to be solid for most situations. My wall voltage here varies quite a bit. It never really goes past 120, but it will dip down to 118, no problem. So because of that, I don't want to bias an amp potentially 118 volts from the wall, and then they go to a club and it's 121. So this gives me a lot of flexibility there. Current limiter, I built this following the Uncle Doug video, and it's got a 200 watt bulb in there. This has worked great for me. I just keep it here and plug it into the Variac when it's time to do that for an amplifier. And then kind of the last major things I want to show over here. This oscilloscope I actually got for free. A friend's work. They were doing a kind of an e-waste drive or whatever, and this was in there being thrown away, and so he was able to snag this for me. And yeah, it's old, it's not great, but it works just fine. Auxbox, I highly recommend one of these for any Amp Tech, because you're able to run amps any time of day at any settings. You could completely dime a 100 watt Marshall like I have here and make sure the amp is running healthy, in a way that you can never do if you're plugging into a cab for 99.99% of the population. So you can just run headphones out, no problem. And that allows me to do a lot of work late at night, which is super handy. And it sounds great. And I can also record amps and show you guys what they sound like without having to mic up a cab when I'm on the workbench as well. So this is probably one of my favorite workbench tools. And I don't know anybody else that's really using one of these for that, but I definitely recommend it. I've been using it for a long time now, no problems whatsoever. And then signal generator, you got to have one of these for a number of reasons. But this was a gift from a fellow Amp Tech friend who used to live in the area, and I know nothing about it other than it works great. So let's get to a little bit more of the technology stuff, and I got a couple other items that I couldn't fit on here. So let's switch this out and move over to that. Okay, let's close it out with some of my final favorite tools here. Now this is my chassis iron when I do my chassis grounds. It is a Weller SP80, if you can see that. And this thing is more than adequate for basically any amp. The only amp it's ever really struggled with is the giant 100 watt Marshall when I try to do a chassis ground for that sucker. Just too much for it, but I've got a bigger iron for that. Otherwise, this works perfect. It's very maneuverable, easy to use. You see people on YouTube that have these gigantic gigantic old irons, and they're so large that they just can't really do a clean, pinpoint accurate job. It's just not possible because of the size of it. This allows you to get really, really pinpoint with your solder joint, and you will be better if you use one of these. I promise you that. So big fan. Again, they're not expensive either. I actually went and got, this was a new old stock off of eBay I got from, I don't know, the 90s, 80s, based off of the cover art on the box. And I heard the older ones were a little bit better than the newer ones. I guess had some failing issues. This has been rock solid for me for a long time. So that's why I did. It cost me like 20 bucks. This is probably my favorite just kind of toy tool. This is a 3D printed little air gun. It's got one of those tiny little computer fans you see in like a server, and it is extraordinarily powerful. You got a little slider here to adjust the speed of it, and if I just blow this real quick, it like pushes your hand back. It's so strong. It's got different attachments to focus it. This is extremely useful for just cleaning out chassis, making sure all of the junk is out of there, little bits of solder, splatter, etc. So those are, you can get them off Amazon. There's a million companies that do the same exact thing. It's just 3D printed, so it doesn't matter what brand you get. Just find one that's in your price range. Highly, highly recommend this. This is, everyone I've shown this has went out and bought one. It's pretty sweet. Now this is actually, I guess technically sponsored, both of these elements. You guys have seen this on the channel before. This is the, I guess, Licado looper. This is awesome. The company reached out, and I get a lot of companies that reach out about wanting me to, do stuff. Usually it's just Chinese companies, that make pedals or whatever else. And I'm not a pedal reviewer, so I don't care about that stuff. But I need a looper pedal to do my comparison videos and for Amp Tech stuff. A looper pedal is actually really useful, especially paired with an aux box, because you can just run loops through an amp and make sure it's performing correctly and let it go for a while. Now this is great for a number of reasons. Namely, you can have multiple different banks of loops saved in it, and even when it's unplugged, it will save onto the loops. So this has a couple loops on it right now that I can scroll back and forth through that have been saved, and it's not plugged into any power. Plug it in, it'll load those up, no problem. So that's really cool, helpful, and these are off, I think, Amazon, pretty affordable little guys. And this is something they just sent me. They wanted to know if I wanted anything else, and I had an idea. I was talking to some friends about it, and so they sent me over this. I'm going to do a dedicated video probably on, or maybe this will be included in a future Amp Tech video, how I'm using this, but it goes with this cable I made, just kind of piecing together various elements. So this is a rechargeable guitar amp, if you will, and it just uses USB-C. Now, the key for this is being able to use it as kind of a workbench test amp, right? Just to test some things. Well, not necessarily test amp, right? Because I'd run the amp, but more test guitars and whatnot. But this actually allows me to also test amps in kind of a unique way, paired with this. Now, the cool thing is you can run headphone out as well. So I was just working on my pedal board last night, calibrating my Deluxe Memory Man. I ran into this, used headphones, and was able to calibrate it by ear through this because it's nice and clean. So that was kind of cool. But running this, paired with this wiring harness I built, this is just kind of leftover. I had a 1/4 inch. You put this into the rechargeable amp there. And you've got the ground connection or the shield connection and the hot connection separated. The ground will go to chassis. And then this side has a 0.1 microfarad 630 volt cap in series. And then this would clip onto a resistor, so you can determine if there's noise in the circuit from that resistor or not. How noisy is that resistor? Carbon comps can be pretty noisy, especially vintage ones. So you clip this on, and this will output the noise from that resistor. And the other end is grounded, and the 0.1 cap here filters out any of the DC, so only the AC or the audio signal passes through, so you don't damage anything. So kind of a cool thing, and I did some tests, and it actually works really well. So I'm excited to have this as part of my, my toolbox, if you will. Another little homebrew thing I did is to discharge filter caps. You want to, connect the filter cap positive to ground. But if you do just straight wire to ground, you're going to get sparks because you're, dumping 300 volts plus to ground in an instant. So it's going to get a spark, which is not good for the caps and obviously dangerous. So what this is this has a, I believe it's a 6.8K resistor, if I remember correctly what I put in here, in series with this. So one end would go on the filter cap, the other one would go on ground, and then the resistor slows down the rush of voltage to ground so that you don't get that big spark. Now there are companies that make stand-in, ready to go solutions which are identical to this, but they have, I'll show right here actually. I've repurposed mine, but this was when I first started doing Amp Tech stuff. This is from Weber, and they call it a snuffer stick, I think. So it's literally a piece of wood. It's got this little connection, and I opened this one up, and it's literally just a resistor, a Vishay 2-watt power metal film resistor inside, and some wire connected. That's all it is. So currently this is set up to be actually just another variation of this, where I can connect the sleeve to ground, just like I have here, and then there is a 0.1 cap in here, so I can just touch that, and it does exactly the same that this does, just a bit more maneuverable, but I have to hold it. So yeah, anyways, moving on. For biasing amplifiers, I picked up this Weber Bias Right, which is not made anymore. It's got 4 different options. It's a bit cumbersome with being hardwired, and these are quite heavy. It's not ideal, and actually one of them is broken, and I don't know what happened. It's maybe always been like that. I pretty typically only use 2, but 3 comes in handy, or 4 comes in handy when you get like a twin or a big Marshall or something. So just saves you some time. But yeah, this actually works really well, ignoring the one bad one, and allows me to quickly see the plate voltage and the current for multiple different tube sockets or tubes at once. So definitely recommend something along these lines. If you can find one, I think this is a very good unit. Not ideal, but I'm not sure of anyone on the market that's better than this. So anyways, I think that does it. I'm sure there's something I'm going to forget. I'm forgetting now, and I'm going to think back, dang, I wish I showed this. But in general, I think that's a decent overview of the Workbench and everything I use on a pretty much daily basis. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Did you enjoy this little rundown? Do you have any further questions? Drop them in comments below. And until next time, see ya.